Hello, this video is for A-level computer science students, particularly people who want some practice and confidence converting from Python to C#. So we're going to focus on selection, so if statements in this video, and we've got a Python program which outputs a couple of things to display. We've got a main menu. It asks the user to enter an item in, so an integer number, a whole number, and then depending on what they type in, it gives a different answer. And we need to try and implement the same kind of thing in C#. So first we're going to do the output. So print in Python displays some text to the screen. So in C# we use console.writeLine to display some text. Let's just make a bit more space. And then remember, every line of text, every instruction needs to end in a semicolon for C#. So we'll do the same to choose which type of car. I'm pressing Control and Shift and the arrow keys to be able to select a whole word at a time. And I'm using Visual Studio Community Edition 2019. So hopefully that will run. It's Control and F5, your shortcuts, once you've set up a project. And the project that I've got here is a console.net application. Good. So it lets us, well, it displays a number, but it doesn't yet let us type anything in. So in Python, the next line of code that we've got says enter your choice. We use input to ask the question, int to convert to a number, and then we store it in a variable. Well, C# is a little bit different. We need to declare the variable explicitly by saying what data type it is. We don't have a function that will display something on the screen and ask a question. We need to split it up into two. So it's console.writeLine help.write, and in fact I'm going to use write rather than writeLine, because writeLine will put a new line constant on the end, and so it will go on to the next line. Write won't put a new line constant on the end, so it will let us type in after that colon here. So then to actually let the user type something in, we can do console.readline, but console.readline is a function, as in it's a subprogram, something built into C# that will return a value. The return value is a string, as in some text, and we need to try and convert it to an int. So we're going to have to force it by saying int.pass, and then pass what the user types in as a parameter, and it will try and convert it to an integer. Okay, then the next line in Python sets up a variable called choice and sets it to valid. So we're going to say string because it stores some text, and then use the assignment operator to set the value. It's grey if it's not used yet. So we've got some variables here which are declared, as in they exist, but they're not being used properly yet. Okay, so in Python, you just use indentation to select your if statements. So let's go for all of these. And you can do multiple lines of indentation in Visual Studio by selecting and pressing Tab. But in C# you need brackets around your Boolean expression, as in Boolean means true or false. This is an expression, as in some stuff, that evaluates to equals either true or false. So if selection 1 is 1, we don't use a colon in C#, we use our scope brackets. And then instead of print, remember we need console.writeLine. I used Control and Delete to delete the line to the right of the cursor. And then instead of elif, we're just going to say else if, or else and then if. Or we could just have lots of if statements, or perhaps even better, we're going to say switch. So switch is not supported in Python, but it's instead of having lots of if statements for the same value. So you can say, I want to switch between different behaviors based on what selection 1 is. So if selection 1 is 1, then I'm going to do this. And then break means stop dealing with if selection 1 is 1. Then, in case selection 1 is 2, what are we supposed to do? We chose a saloon car. Let's plop that in here. Console.WriteLine, semicolon at the end. Did I remember the semicolon on that one? Yeah, we did. And we have an error here because every case statement expects you need to tell it, help, you need to say when to stop. And then we've got something for 3. So case, help, case 3. Sorry about my typing. And then we need to output to the display. So output in Python is print. We'll go console.WriteLine instead. What else have we got? And an else. Okay, so else in Python means if it's not any of the if or elif statements, then we're going to display this instead. So for your switch block here, we're just going to use default. So if it's not 1, if it's not 2, if it's not 3, otherwise we default back to doing this. So that's in Python. Let's convert to C# by doing console.WriteLine, semicolon on the end, set the variable, and it's not absolutely essential to get your indentation correct. You don't get an error like you do in Python, but it does look so much nicer and it makes your code easier to read if you do have indentation. So we have more in the program. So there's another if statement here that says if choice is valid, and then we've got some extra stuff to work through. Well, let's just test and see what happens so far. Control F5 to run. Let's go for a sports car. Good, it says you chose a sports car. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to grab all of this text. I pressed home to go to the beginning of the line, control and shift and end on the keyboard to select everything up until the end of the file. Now I want to paste this outside of the switch statement, and I'm going to put it all in a comment block so that it should all be part of a comment. So /* in C# is a multi-line comment. So let's just work through each bit now. Don't need that anymore because we've got all the code that we need as our comment. So if choice equals valid, so if, and our Boolean expression goes in brackets, choice is equal to valid, as in we've typed in something sensible, but that needs to be a string. Then selection 2 is all of these. So it looks like we've messed up indentation here. Let's get rid of the ones that we've done. So we don't need that anymore. Selection 2. So again, we can't just start using a variable until we've said what data type it is. The user is going to type in either P or C. So I'm going to say that's a string. So a string can be multiple characters, 0 or more characters. There's no straight swap for input. We need to ask the question first. Console.WriteLine, help. And then we need to read the line. Console.readAlign from the console input. And this time we don't need to do any casting because readline returns a string and we're saving that into a variable which is already a string. Okay, what's next? Then in Python, it was converting what the user typed in to uppercase and storing it into the same variable. So we've got two options here. We could either go selection 2 equals what selection 2 was, dot, is there a 2 upper? Yeah, that would work. Or we could do it all in one line and just get it from the console. And then once you've read that line, you can then convert that to uppercase. So you can kind of chain it. You get the console, from the console you read a line, and then from that thing that you've read a line, you can convert that to uppercase, as in capital letters. All right, that's that line done. Next. Then it says we want to get the first letter of what we've just typed in. So this is just going to be a character, an individual letter. And the rest of the syntax is fine apart from a semicolon. as in we use the square brackets for indexing. The 0 means look at the first character. We get the first character of that thing that the user just typed in, and we store that into this variable. Okay, get in there. Let's get all of these and do all of the selection in one go. So notice now we have nested selection. You've got an if statement inside an if statement. So we need our brackets to surround the Boolean expression. We don't use colons and indentation. We use scope brackets, curly braces, moustache brackets, whatever you want to call them. And then console.writeLine, you chose to proceed. Okay, what's wrong here? If selection first letter, okay, so selection first letter is a character, and this is a string, so I'm just going to surround it with single quotes. It doesn't matter in Python whether you use single quotes or double quotes as long as they match, as in the first one has to be the same as the second one. In C#, double quotes means a string, as in multiple characters, but a single quote means a single character, which is quite nice and easy to remember. Okay, so then an elif. So we won't use a switch this time, we'll just say else if, and then put the Boolean expression, the thing that is going to evaluate to either true or false, in here. So is selection to first letter equal to C? Notice this has to be a capital letter because we converted what the user types in to a capital letter up here. And then we need to know what to do. So let's plop that in here, console.writeLine. Pressed Control and space to do the autocomplete. Now, C# is case sensitive, so it matters if you put the capital letter in the wrong place, but if you press Control and space, it will try and autocomplete it, which is rather nice. Right, where are we? And then we've got an else. So we'll do that just the same as we've got here. Now we've got two choices here. We don't actually need the scope brackets, the curly braces, because it will just try and do something until it gets to one semicolon. But it's bad practice to do that because it's not crystal clear that it's only that line. So it's a matter of preference. It would work without putting these curly braces, but I think it's easier to understand and read that this only happens if you don't type in a P or a C. All right, what else was there? Then it just says, have a nice day, and it gets you to type enter in, and we're done. We can test. Fab, let's have a look. So I think if we have a look at the indentation here, it says have a nice day if there's a valid entry, and then regardless of whether or not it's a valid entry, it will say press enter to exit the program. So let's use some code folding for this. If we press the minus, all of this code is dependent on that if statement. All of that is the switch. So if the choice is valid, it needs to be inside that square bracket. Then we say have a nice day. Dot write line. Help, don't know what I pressed there, but it wasn't the right thing. And then this, press enter to exit the program. That is going to happen regardless of whether or not the choice is valid, so outside these brackets. And again, we need to say console.writeLine, and then console.readline is the equivalent of waiting for the user to press enter. Let's see, the \n there just means put a blank line. Right, so let's choose something invalid. Let's press H, and we get an error because it tries to convert H to a number. So we haven't done any exception handling here. Let's try a number that isn't valid. So 6, it just says invalid choice. Good. Let's try again. Let's go 3. It's valid. Yeah, do we want to proceed or cancel? We'll try something invalid. Invalid entry, have a nice day. Jolly good. 3 sports car. Come on. Seems to have crashed. There we go. Let's proceed. And you chose to proceed. Fab, it works. So the important thing here, if you're doing selection, your Boolean expressions, the things that you're checking that are either going to be true or false, always go in brackets. Every statement needs to end with a semicolon, and you can use switch statements to replace lots of if statements, as in this could be if selection equals 1, if selection equals 2, if selection equals 3, or if selection equals anything else. I hope this has been useful, and all the very best. Remember to ask any questions. You don't learn just by panicking, you learn by keeping on going, asking questions, and building up experience bit by bit. All the best. Bye bye.